Majority of the population in the Philippines are Catholic, and as such, marriage is recognized as a sacred sacrament, and even under the family code, marriage is defined as the foundation of the family wherein a special contract of permanent union between a man and a woman entered into in accordance with the law for the establishment of conjugal and family life. Sadly, not all marriages end till death do us part as vowed. Some end in separation, divorce, or annulment for various reasons, such as physical violence, economic disputes, moral abuse, infidelity, fraud, and abandonment. In fact, around 10,600 cases of annulment are filed with the Office of the Solicitor General in 2012. Of the 1,300 weddings celebrated every day, 1 out of 5 married couples end in annulment. With alarming numbers such as these, how long does the process of annulment take? How many of these cases are declared as annulled per day? And what happens to the couple after their marriage is annulled? Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight we will be discussing your legal rights on annulment, what you need to know about annulment and how to file for one if your marriage is no longer working.
Our guests for tonight are Attorney Antonio Ligon, Professor at the De La Salle University Graduate School of Business, and Attorney Marinel Miranda Lopez, Private Practitioner. Good evening and thank you for being with us.
Good evening, Attorney Manel, Attorney Tony.
Good evening, Rod. Good evening, Karen.
Yes, well, you know, sadly, this is a very popular topic.
Yes.
And there was a lot of requests regarding this topic now. And sadly, so of course, it's something that lawyers don't really like to get into or handle, but unfortunately it happens. And
I guess we start with first the basics.
Yeah.
One, what is really annulment and how is this different from divorce and legal separation? Because for Filipinos, we just always say, wala hiwalay na kami. But sometimes you don't know, is it really a legal separation or are you annulled?
Well, if you look at the history of the Philippine law, you can find out that legal separation is a relative divorce. No? They just changed it to legal separation. So
but
there's a big difference.
But the marriage remains.
Yeah, the marriage remains, and of course, annulment you sever the marriage bond. No? There's no more tie. There's no more.
Yeah. Siguro just to be clear, annulment is really when the court declares that there was no marriage in the first place.
Yes.
Okay, so the couple, when they get annulled, they can remarry again. How is this different from those that are void from the start? Siguro let's talk about annulment. Ano yung grounds for annulment?
Well, we have the declaration of nullity of marriage, and commonly we have this ground under Article 36 of the Family Code. Psychological incapacity. Now, this is really the complaint of so many parties because one, when you go to court, you need to really hire a lawyer for this, no? And then you have to get a psychiatrist to prove that one or two parties are psychologically incapacitated. Now, sad to say, there is no clear-cut definition of what psychological incapacity is. Probably
Attorney Manel, what guidelines in terms of those decided by the Supreme Court or the courts, lower courts, when they say there is psychological incapacity, what are the normal indications of this?
With psychological incapacity, the party has to prove that the other party cannot validly perform the marital obligations, the essential marital obligations. So once the party is incapable of performing this, then you can go.
And you're talking about physically, emotionally.
Yes.
For instance, failure to support, is that enough? Is that enough grounds for saying that you're psychologically incapacitated?
That's one of the factors that you are unable to cope with the married life. But you know, the court really requires a lot of I would say a lot of things to say that there's really psychological incapacity, like it must be incurable, it has juridical antecedents, you know. It's not just simple as that as calling a psychiatrist and saying, oh, this person has a narcissistic tendency. No, the court will go beyond that. In fact, in so many cases, when you reach the Supreme Court will deny the grant of annulment because they will find the ruling wanting of the requirements. No.
Okay. For instance, if your husband or is an alcoholic, can you file for annulment?
No, not necessarily. Alcoholism in itself is not a valid ground. So there ought to be a deeper sense in that addiction in alcohol. Does that enable the person to perform his obligation as a partner or as a spouse?
Siguro that could be a factor, no? The fact that he's maybe an alcoholic, maybe it can be a factor to prove psychological capacity, but it can, in it by itself,
Yes.
it cannot, no?
So I guess we have to clarify to our guests, the only ground for filing for annulment is psychological incapacity. So even if you have a wife or a husband who's an alcoholic, a drug addict, or physically abusive or psychologically abusive, then it's not necessarily something that will support a case for annulment. Although maybe we can tell our viewers that in this case, what they have as a remedy is
legal
separation.
separation. That was the
But there are other, of course, psychological capacity is just one. Diba? It's not, in fact, number 9, I think. So can we just go through all the other grounds? No? Of course, when it comes to the
declaration
essential,
of nullity.
the essential elements ba,
the
of,
declaration of nullity, you're lucky. Let's say the two parties married before 18. So
there you go.
So ito yung mga void from the start.
Yeah, void from the start.
So pag below 18, both or
Yes.
either of the parties, then you can just file for declaration
Yun,
of
walang
nullity.
exception yun, di ba?
wala.
Sa below 18.
Yeah.
Incestuous marriage also.
Incestuous
Yes.
marriage.
So up to what degree? First cousin?
First cousin, yeah.
Second cousin?
First cousin.
Okay,
The
so-
fourth
Second cousin
degree
pwede.
of consanguinity is up to the first cousin.
Okay, so just to clarify,
Second cousin, marami kang
pag second cousin,
disqualified.
pwede ikasal under our law. Pag first cousin, yan ang void from the start. Okay, what else?
What else pa ba? Ano pa ba yung mga other grounds for annulment?
Well, you have, of course, you can ask for annulment when there is fraud.
Yun.
There
Undue
is
influence.
insanity of one of the parties. But this thing, they don't normally file this because there's a time frame. 5
So
years
let's go
after you
one by
discover
one.
that,
Okay, what type
wala
of
na.
fraud is sufficient for you
Well,
to file a case for
fraud that's really serious, you know,
Yes.
that you
Kunwari,
misrepresented.
sinabi, mayaman. Then, when they got married, na-discover niya,
Mahirap.
hindi naman pala
Hindi
mayaman.
naman.
To, ang dami
Hindi
palang
ganun
utang.
klaseng
Okay,
fraud.
what type of fraud is
Let's
enough
say
to...
it goes into the person. Let's say you represent yourself to be an honest and upright, then your spouse discovered that you have criminal records, that you have been, charged with so many cases of stapa, and then that's really
That's
serious.
a ground.
Yeah.
Within how many months or what period do you have to file the case of declaration of nullity?
That's what I'm saying. These grounds are not so popular because the
not
law
commonly used.
requires a limit, 5 years after the discovery.
Yes.
Now, normally, if you've been living with your spouse with 6 years, wala na lahat yan. That's why they always resort to annulment because it does not prescribe.
So if you were going to make statistically, how many cases of annulment use psychological capacity? Would you say 90%?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct. 90%.
90% is psychological
90%.
capacity. Everything else parang
I will not mention the years of my practice, sasabihin mo
Yeah.
kasi sobrang tanda. Hindi naman.
We won't get
But
into
in
that
my
one.
years
Yeah.
of practice, siguro, sabihin na natin sa 30 to 50 cases,
Yeah.
isa lang yung hindi psychological incapacity ang ground. Like there was
So
no marriage
generally,
license.
laging psychological.
Yes.
That's the popular
Attorney
ground
Manel,
now.
the other ground would be mistake as to the identity of the other person. Okay, we talked about fraud. Kunwari, yun nga, represent sa'yo na mayaman, yung pala hindi. Okay, we've already discussed here that it's not sufficient to constitute fraud in order to file for a declaration of nullity. What about yung mistake as to the identity of the
Ayan,
person you're
very good
marrying? Ano to?
question.
Yes, that's a good
Paano kung
question.
sinabi niya, I'm a famous artista or of course, I'm a
sinabi,
lawyer?
I'm Karen
Is that
Jimeno.
sufficient?
Pero di pala, no?
Hindi pala si Karen
If,
Jimeno.
if the person
Okay.
would say, I'm Karen Jimeno, then that is mistaken identity. Pero if the person would simply say, I'm rich, And then eventually, it was proven that he's not the heir of the Ayalas. Hindi pwede.
ground
It's not
yun.
a valid
Ang,
ground.
ang,
not a
very,
valid
ang
ground.
very common example dyan sa mistaken identity is yung sa twins, no?
Okay.
Kung halimbawa may twin brother ka, Rod, sa
Yung pinadala mo on the day of the
ang pinadala mo, yung
Malas naman
kakambal
ng
mo.
twin brother na yan, no?
Di ba?
Okay.
Kasi ayaw mo talagang matuloy doon. Yun, pwede.
But yan, extreme cases yan eh.
Extreme
No,
yan.
but, and I don't know if this still happens. Force and intimidation. Yari, shotgun wedding. Binuntis mo yung anak ko.
Pwede pa rin yan, but yan nga may time frame.
May time
Kasi
frame
oras
yan,
na tumigil yung intimidation na yan, you have to file a complaint.
Right away.
Eh kung nagkaanak na kayo ng 10, wala
Oo,
nang
wala
consent
na.
intimidation.
Wala na yung
May
ground na yun.
ratification.
Another one would be, ito maraming nalilito dito, if the people getting married, if one of them is either one or both of them are below 21, but over 18, you need the parental consent.
Consent,
Now, if
yes.
there's no parental consent, ano yung status ng marriage?
Voidable.
Voidable.
You
okay.
can ask for
Yes.
the annulment.
Oo. But what's
Pero
the time
this-
frame?
Again,
have,
5
yes.
years.
Yes,
5 years.
5 years from the
After
time
reaching the
age of 21.
Okay,
Yes,
so warning to the people out there,
Yes.
if you're getting married and one of you or both of you are below 21, you need to secure a parental consent. Pag wala yan, then it's voidable, meaning you can file for annulment, but after 5 years from either one of you turning 21, then this ground will no longer be a ground that you can use
And
to
there's
file
a
for annulment.
caveat for that. If the parties freely cohabited upon reaching the age of 21, so wala na.
Wala na rin.
Useless
So
na.
useless na rin yung
Like,
5 years.
yes.
If you're 21, tapos
You freely
okay naman
cohabited.
kayo, you consummated the marriage, then consummating the marriage, that's proof of cohabitation.
Yes.
Correct.
Manal, yung ano naman, yung Anthony, no, yung psychological incapacity, meron bang prescriptive period yan?
Wala yan.
Wala.
Wala yan. Ang kagandahan yan. Wala.
It
Wala.
does not
Okay.
prescribe.
Kaya siguro tama
That's
yung
why it's
sinasabi
avoid
ni
it.
Attorney Tony na karamihan talaga ng nagfa-file for annulment are yung psychological incapacity na ground.
That's the difference between declaration of nullity and annulment. Kasi with declaration of nullity, there's no prescription.
No prescriptive period.
Anytime you can file it.
Yes.
Okay, we'll have more to talk about.
Dami, no?
But for now,
Yes.
First
Yes.
ano pa lang. First
For
gap pa lang
now,
yan.
we'll have to take a break. Legal Help Desk will return after this short break. One of the common reasons for some marriages to end in separation or annulment are problems with their finances. Armando was married to his wife for 8 years in the 1980s before he went abroad to work as an OFW.
In 1980, nag-start na ako mag-abroad. So, okay naman ang pagsasama namin. Yearly, umuwi ako. So, okay naman.
Due to distance, Armando decided to go home to be with his family and start a business instead.
So, in 6 years na pag-abroad ko, nag-decide ako na mag-resign na lang. Nag-business ako ng konti. Tindahan ako. Nag-decide siya na mag-abroad siya. Nung mag-abroad siya, doon kami nagkaroon ng malaking problema.
Their problems worsened until Armando finally decided to leave his wife and family.
So, nagka-problema ako sa biyanan ko. Nag-abroad siya, wala akong trabaho kundi nasa tindahan lang. Nagpapadala siya, hindi sa akin, not direct sa akin, kundi sa magulang niya. Kasi the time nag-abroad ako, wala silang masabi sa akin. Bigay ako lahat sa kanila. Nag-decide ako sa sarili ko na humiwalay. 1986 yun.
Like any couple whose problems can no longer be fixed, Armando wants to know how to legalize his separation from his estranged wife.
Wala kaming kasulatan na hiwalay. Kumbaga sa talagang hiwalay lang. Nag-try ako talaga na file ng yun na isang gusto kong itanong din kung paano kung magagawa ng paraan din na maging legalize yung aming paghihiwalay.
You're still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel with our guests, Attorney Antonio Ligon and Attorney Marinel Miranda Lopez.
Ayan.
So you see Armando, matagal
yeah.
na silang hiwalay,
Yes.
but there's really no case filed yet. So I guess the question, this is very common.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yes.
people usually say, wala na kami ng asawa ko. And then you ask them, kasi 10 years na kami hindi nagkikita, tapos meron na akong ibang boyfriend, meron na siya ibang girlfriend, but then you find out that their marriage is really still intact, meaning wala pa silang fina-file. So what should these people, including Armando, do?
Magandang liwanagin natin, no? One basic rule is physical separation. Does not entitle you to annulment, no?
Yes.
So ang first step dyan is alamin natin kung either si Armando o yung kanyang may bahay is fit to be called psychologically incapacitated.
Okay.
No?
So first of all, the only ground they can use, kunwari absent any of the circumstances, yung di ba yung mga pinag-usapan natin na kung may fraud, kung
yes,
may
correct.
defects sa marriage, kung walang marriage license, or one of them was a minor, pag walang mga ganon, their
Doon na.
only
The
hope
only ground.
of being annulled is really psychological incapacity.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
sige, that's clear.
Kasi with that time frame, alam mong lumipas na yung 5 years. Doon sa lahat ng other grounds, 5 years lang ang binibigay ng batas.
Yeah.
Now, with psychological incapacity, he has to consult a psychiatrist, an expert. Because the lawyer cannot say, oh, you know, I have a case similar to that, but the one who really knows is the clinical psychologist. no?
Manal,
So the concern is,
okay,
sorry,
go
the
ahead.
concern with Mr. Armando,
Armando, yes.
siya yung, he was the one who
Who
left.
left?
left.
As an
Initially.
OFW.
initially.
Yeah.
And no, after.
No, he left initially, and then
Yeah, because
after
as an
that he
OFW.
came back.
And then
he
he
set up a
separated
store,
the
and then the wife left. And
So
yung
now-
wife
now
naman
they-
ang
that
wife
was in
naman
1986.
nagpapadala ng pera.
Pinapadala na raw
Yung-
directly
yung
sa parents ng wife.
Parents
But
So now they are separated
Oo.
for 15 or so years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so in this case, ano yung steps that Armando has to take? One, you said approach a psychologist,
Yes.
psychiatrist
Or
first to
psychologist.
find out if he
Tell the
has
story. You know,
Tell the story.
The
Magpapa-evaluate siya kung meron
yes,
siyang
correct.
psychological incapacity.
Kung makontak yung wife, good. Then the wife will also appear before the psychiatrist, and then
Yeah.
the psychiatrist will evaluate.
Now,
Mahal po ba ang psychiatrist?
Well, in my experience, it varies. You know, may experience na dyan, para na ring lawyer na
yeah, may mga
meron
hours.
din sila.
No, my question is, if I'm the one who wants the annulment, can I hire a psychiatrist and say, I am psychologically
Yun, ganun yung
incapacitated?
advice ni
Even if you
Atty.
say that,
Yes.
and the psychiatrist really doing his or her job, he or she will test you.
Yes.
If he finds out, yes,
Di
no
ba
problem
conflict of
with
interest
that.
yun? I'm
No,
paying
not-
this person,
That's
No.
I'm paying this
not a
person
conflict
to
of
tell,
interest.
because I want to get annulled.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it will be,
do something about
you know,
it.
that will be the job of the public prosecutor, no?
Okay.
And the OSG, no? That's their job to determine it.
But Attorney Manel and Attorney Tony, in this case, okay, so si Armando, if he goes to a psychiatrist and then gets evaluated, tapos sinabi sa kanya, hindi ka psychologically incapacitated,
About the spouse.
can he then
throw
still
that
file a case, can he still file a case for annulment and then compel the wife to be tested for psychological incapacity?
Well,
Ganun ba yung magiging process na
No,
susundin
no, no.
niya?
The next process should be the wife should be tested, or from his
Kaso
story
nasa
alone.
abroad,
No,
yeah.
from his story, the psychiatrist can say if the wife has some problem, you know. But
There
without
can be
that ground,
Yes, sir.
he cannot just go to court and say I want my marriage annulled because we've not seen
Yeah, Manel.
each other.
Yeah.
Yes,
what
Attorney
we
Manel, go
did
ahead.
with my clients, for those who are yung ganyan, off the OFW yung wife, who cannot participate in the testing, no, what we do is we ask the help of the psychiatrist or psychologist to have an evaluation of the wife based on the stories of other witnesses and of the husband. So that's what we do.
So Armando should look for other witnesses that
Yes.
know the wife to talk to the psychiatrist. And then that's the report that they will use as basis
Correct.
to file the case for
Annulment.
annulment.
Now, this is where a lot of people are, whenever I have a casual conversation with people, na parang they would go, yeah, nag-annul ako eh. Ginawa ko, ako na lang ang psychologically incapacitated. Kasi, you know,
Parang wala nang problema.
you feel like there was obviously a collusion, di ba? Well, in that scenario,
Di ba the
Bahala
Office of
pa-
the Solicitor
Yeah.
General
Office
actually
They will have to
investigate.
intervene.
Yeah.
They will
Well,
intervene.
You know,
Definitely.
this is the Philippines, no?
Yeah.
And realistically, sometimes
It's
it can happen, no?
Yeah.
But you know, a judge who will really study his case and
Yeah.
when it goes up to the Supreme Court, nakikita yan eh.
Yes.
Nadi-deny.
Yeah. And before we
Remembers.
leave that, just a word of caution to Armando. Even if you have been separated from your wife for a long time, please take note that you are still married. So either of you are not allowed to have relationships. Ibig sabihin, you cannot get married to someone else. And then if either of you have sexual relations with other people, the wife can be charged for adultery or you can be charged for concubinage if you live with someone, with a mistress, for instance.
Right.
Okay.
Now, we have some questions naman from Karen, and of course Tony, MNL. From our televiewers. Answering this will help, of course, our guests. Starting with Daisy. I have been married to my husband for 8 years. But for the last 2, he has been carrying an affair with another woman in Dubai, where he works. I found out about the affair through Facebook because she has been posting their pictures together. I went to file for annulment. Or I want to file for annulment. What are the steps for filing and what grounds can I use to file for this? I think it's infidelity.
Pahamak talaga Facebook, di ba? Maraming napapahamak dyan.
Well, balik tayo, it's just a review of what we discussed earlier, no? So he has to consult the psychiatrist, tell the story, his story, and then the story of the
It's
the
the woman
spouse,
here
no?
who wants
the
to
woman,
initiate,
yeah.
no? Oo.
The story of her spouse, no? Kung may makita yung psychiatrist, well, good. Kung hindi, very clear, ang kanyang ground lang is legal separation.
Oo.
For
So just to be
infidelity.
clear,
Yeah.
Attorney Manel, cheating is
Yes.
not an automatic ground for annulment.
Annulment, yes.
Okay, so her remedy, if it's not,
If at all.
if there's no psychological capacity,
It's
her
only
remedy-
legal separation.
Okay, sige.
Okay.
Our next question is from David. My wife is working as an OFW in Spain, but we've been separated for 5 years. Can I file for an annulment even without her presence here in the country? Or do I still need her to be here so that our case can push through? How long will the process of annulment be, given that she is not always here?
Yan.
Plenty of issues.
So in absentia,
In
pwede
absentia, and
tuloy?
how long will it take?
Yes, it
In
can
absen-
happen. You can
yes.
file, no? Of course, he has to determine where to send the summon, no?
And what
Because-
evidence does he need to show? Yun nga, yung mga testimony of friends, I guess,
Yes.
relatives,
Yes.
ganun ba yan?
The family history, you know, once you have present the psychiatrist, you will present the relatives, and then the people who knows her or who has a clear background of this person, no? Because you're going to present to the court the historical and juridical antecedents of what transpired.
You're trying to build the character of the other party. Since the other party is absent here in the Philippines, then necessarily we have to present to the court, who's this person?
But Attorney Manel, if the wife never comes back from Spain, can the case proceed? Or do they need to make sure that the summons will be served on
That
her?
would be called extra
Extrajudicial
territorial.
search.
Yeah,
Yes.
extrajudicial.
Publication may cure.
Yes,
Territorial,
publication will do.
All right.
So that's one of the
So it can
concern
happen.
because
Kahit
of the
absent
expense.
the whole time, the trial can
It can
proceed.
happen, yeah.
Yes,
All
the
right.
court, yes.
Oh, sorry. We have another question. Francesca asks, divorce is allowed in the country where I'm located. Can I get a divorce here? And would this be recognized in the Philippines?
Nako, yan yung
several questions
common
here.
question.
Yes.
I've heard that. May iba sinasabi, pupunta na lang kami sa Las Vegas para mag-divorce.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
please
The
clarify.
answer should be, have you changed your citizenship?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yun muna. We have to answer that. Because if the person is still a Filipino citizen, then definitely he or she cannot obtain that divorce from that country and then make it appear here in the Philippines that is valid.
Because
Our
our-
court always say that if you don't intend to reside in the country where you get the divorce, then that divorce has no effect.
Not even you can't, it's not even the being a resident.
Or being-
Oo,
yeah,
you have to be
changing,
a
yeah.
citizen.
Citizen,
So just to
yeah,
clarify
right.
to our viewers, divorce is not legal in the Philippines. We have no divorce. So even if you've been living in the States for the past 50 years and you're still a Filipino citizen, then you will not be able to get a divorce and have it recognized.
Hold on.
here.
If the spouse,
Pero-
Yes. was the one
Yes,
of
that's
was the-
Article
Yeah.
26.
If the foreign spouse.
Yeah, obtained divorce,
divorce,
then that
It will have an
divorce
effect.
decree will have an effect here in the Philippines. Ngayon, yeah, and that is not covered in annulment and declaration of nullity. That is now the recognition of a foreign
So,
judgment.
but I also want to clarify, this is something I've mastered because I'm married to a foreigner.
You study this.
As a
Yeah.
Filipino, if my husband does not obtain a divorce, I cannot file for divorce in the
Has
U.S.
to be
So,
here.
meaning
Correct.
if I'm the one who initiated in the U.S. a divorce proceeding and then it's granted, I cannot have that recognized here. It has to be the foreign spouse that initiates the divorce in their country, that recognizes divorce, for that to be
Let's hope that
recognized.
doesn't happen, though.
If I'm not mistaken, the foreign decree has to be proved here also,
Here.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kailangan, hindi pwede.
Yeah, very interesting topic. I still have a lot of questions, and I'm sure our viewers as well. So we'll take another short break for now. Legal Help Desk will be back to answer your questions. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel with Attorney Antonio Ligon and Attorney Marinel Miranda Lopez.
All right, I'd like to ask, between legal separation and annulment, no? In legal separation, usually there's what you call a cooling off period. A cooling period of 6
off
months,
period,
no?
yes.
Where the judge will not allow the case to prosper until such time 6 months will lapse. I think the purpose for that is to allow them to try to reconcile.
Reconcile,
Is there such a thing sa annulment? Is it
No.
required that you have that 6 month?
Well, the philosophy is the marriage is actually void and you're just asking for the court to declare it. So in other words, there was really no marriage.
Yeah, no reason
That's
to-
why when we compare divorce and annulment is worse than divorce because in divorce you recognize that there is marriage, the parties just grew tired of each other, they're not...
It's allowed to be civil.
Yes, but in annulment, the marriage should not have happened.
In other words, the divorce subsequent,
yeah, if you're saying that there was no marriage from the start, maybe this is a time for us to clarify. When are the children of the parents that are annulled considered as illegitimate, and when are they considered as legitimate? Because when you're saying that marriage never happened, then what happens to the
Yeah,
status of the
that- that's a good
Dependent on
question.
yes,
That's
it's
a good
dependent
question.
on the ground.
Yeah, okay.
If, for example, the ground is bigamy or bigamous marriage, then definitely...
Meaning dalawa yung asawa,
Dalawa yung
previously
asawa.
married na pala yung one of the spouses.
In that case, yung children do sa subsequent marriage will definitely be considered as illegitimate.
Illegitimate.
Yes.
Okay.
But for our favorite ground, the psychological
Children
incapacity, the children are recognized as legitimate.
Legitimate.
What
Yeah.
about marriages na, kunwari, walang marriage license? That's why it's considered as void from the start. Are the children considered as illegitimate?
Illegitimate.
So, illegitimate.
Pati
So,
yung mga-
general rule, basta void, pag sinabing
Void
annulled
ab initio,
marriage,
yes.
void ab initio, you have illegitimate children, except if the ground is psychological
Psychological
incapacity.
So if you got married below 18,
Ayan din.
and then you had children, illegitimate mga yan.
Yes.
Right. So, which is a major factor. No? But yun nga, as you mentioned earlier, pag psychological incapacity, the children there are still considered legitimate.
Legitimate, yeah.
Which is
Because
which
But
is a
one
big-
of the requirements is you have to deliver the legitim. If you fail to deliver the legitim of the children, then that ruling of the court can be voided also. Assuming
Now,
meron
I have a question. Sige, while, kunwari, the spouses are already separated pa lang, pero no case has been filed, what are their rights in terms of dating other people? Because I know someone just over the weekend who texted me and said she was taking a photo dating with someone, and the photo was sent to her husband. So,
Strictly
is that going to
speaking?
be bad for her?
Strictly speaking, yes, there shouldn't be any dating whatsoever.
you
Strictly
are-
speaking.
Strictly speaking.
We have this
Because we may
expression, you're
use
treading on
that.
a thin line.
Yes.
That's a dangerous, no.
Yeah.
Because it may be is this a woman who's
Yeah.
dating? It may be taken against her, especially if she is the one asking for the annulment.
Now, I'd like to point out what you mentioned earlier, Tony. You said that once you have a decision on annulment, you're required to give your children their presumptive legitim, right?
Yes, correct.
And if
Meaning you
you're not-
share nila sa mana.
Yeah. And there are two. One is that you have to register the annulment decision, right?
Correct.
To register it in the civil registry.
Correct.
And then you also have to give
Partition the property.
the partition, di ba? If let's say you didn't get to do that, but you got married without doing that, what happens to your subsequent marriage?
Well, the subsequent marriage can be considered bigamous.
Yes.
Because it seems that the decree on annulment on the first marriage will be considered null also.
So your void marriage is void. So the decision.
Walang effect.
So bottom line is, if you get an annulment, make sure that you settle all the property
Yes,
issues.
and not only
Ibigay mo
that,
na yung mga
And
shares
give the
ng mga
legitimate.
anak ninyo sa mana, because and register that, because that's required for you to contract
To remarry.
another valid
And
marriage.
Karen, the registration in the civil registry is very important. Kailangan. You have to reflect that, as Rod mentioned.
Okay. But I just find that strange though, because there was already a declaration
Oh,
of nullity.
correct.
And so in a way the court is saying, but no, wait, hold on, it still has valid repercussions. Meaning, valid
Hindi ka pa
marriage
rin pwede
repercussions.
ikasal.
Hindi,
Yeah,
hindi ko
procedure
makakalimutan
first.
yan
Yeah.
kasi nung mga first few years of practice munti kong makakalimutan na huwag i-register. May judge mismo nagsabi, mawabaliwala yung order ko pag di mo i-register.
Okay. All right, wait, we
You
have
have to
some
be very
questions
careful.
from our viewers. We can go on for 2 hours here, but let's continue on with Janus. Janus, who asked, my girlfriend and I got married in February. However, our marriage license is yet to be submitted to the NSO. I believe it should be submitted before the license expires. The thing is, we decided to end our marriage. Noting that we haven't submitted our marriage license to the NSO, do we still need to file for an annulment? Or we just let our marriage license expire for it to be considered null and void? Okay, I'm a little bit confused here because
No.
Yes, the question is very confusing.
marriage license, you have to submit that before
The marriage.
the marriage, right?
marriage,
You
oh.
can't get married without the license.
Because the license number ought to be included in the marriage certificate.
Yeah, so I guess I assume that what Janus is referring to is the certificate.
Baka. Let's
Probably,
clarify.
although he's
Maybe
asking.
tell Janus na if you're talking about the marriage license, if you had it na at na-issue sa'yo yung marriage license and it's valid, then your marriage will be valid.
Valid,
Kahit hindi pa nila na-register yung marriage certificate sa NSO.
Yeah,
Yes.
right?
And with regard to marriage certificate, the absence of which is not a ground for annulment.
Okay. So let's clarify that. Yung marriage license required siya, and it will be required by the solemnizing officer before you get married. In other words, if you don't have a license, you can't get married. Now, the certificate, which comes after the fact, after you get married, iba yun. That has to be filed in the NSO. But even if without that certificate, your marriage is still valid.
Correct.
So they cannot decide to end the marriage. Parang nag-usap
Yeah.
lang sa kape, no? Let's end the marriage na. Parang
We don't have a license.
so they
Let's end
cannot
it.
do
No,
that.
that's not
Okay.
possible.
We have
But it really
another...
happens. Sometimes if you check in the NSO, your marriage is not there.
Really?
Sometimes parties decide not to file anything because it's not there.
That's right.
But that's not really a valid way of ending the
Excuse,
marriage.
yes.
You still have to
Correct.
file for annulment. Okay, we have another question from Emilia. My ex-husband worked in Thailand for 2 years before he abandoned me and our 2 children. 6 years later, I am in a relationship with another man, and he has taken care of my children and even considers them as his own. We want to take our relationship to the next step. Can we get married since my ex-husband has completely abandoned us and has not given any kind of support whatsoever? Or do I have to file for an annulment even though I have no clue as to my ex's whereabouts? This is, very common. It
Yes.
happens all the
Abandonment.
time.
That's an interesting question. It happened in one of my clients. Now, the truth is wala talagang information kung nasaan yung spouse. But the party has this alternative to file for a declaration of absence or presumptive death for 4 years or she has not been appearing. Especially kung halimbawa sundalo yan, pinadala sa Mindanao at that time, wala ka ng balita. Then that can be a ground ng presumptive death and then he can remarry. Now, our law provides that if let's say the other party hindi pala namatay, biglang nagpakita,
Nag-reappear.
Yes.
yun ang magkakaroon ng problema.
So what happens there?
So,
Which is-
magiging
bigyan mo
hindi
siya?
na, although hindi bigyan mo siya, may exception.
May exception.
Yun nga yung exception kasi in good faith, you believe that the other spouse is already gone and that he reappears, mali ka pala. Hindi na valid ngayon yung marriage mo,
Yung
pero hindi ka
subsequent
naman
marriage.
liable for
Bigamy.
Oo.
But what both are valid marriages.
Both are valid
So the
marriages.
children in both marriages are legit.
Correct.
Yes. However, with,
Now, who
with
will you
this-
go home to?
upon the reappearance of the first spouse, they have to be husband and wife again.
Okay.
Yes.
So in this case, the advice that we should give is one, try your best to locate this person so you can file for annulment. But pag wala talaga,
Ayan.
kasi but we have to clarify na abandonment by itself is not a ground for annulment. You still have to prove that either one of you is psychologically incapacitated. So, yung problema niya, it's the wife here and she's already cohabiting with this other guy. Be careful kasi pwede kang file ng adultery ng asawa mo kahit matagal pa kayong hindi na nakikita. Yeah, we have another question from Aida. I've been separated from my husband for 7 years now and have filed for annulment with psychological incapacity as my reason. Unfortunately, it was denied. Can I file a case for annulment again or an appeal? How long before I can do so? What can I do now to ensure that my case will not be denied again?
Well, I believe you cannot file another annulment case. You can appeal the case as long as within the period.
What's the
There should
period,
have
Attorney
been
Manel?
15 days from the issuance of the order from the lower court.
15 days mo.
Kaya tapos na yung question.
Okay, and then, what can she do now kung final na yung judgment? Kung 15 days from the time
Na-deny.
nag-render ng decision
Wala
na
na.
deny, forever na siyang married.
Yeah, you just have to face the...
That's so hard.
Yes, it's so hard. Unless probably she can find another ground which is very impossible for her to refile kasi talaga.
Hanapin niya yung
It should have
birth
been.
certificate. Baka
I'm
naman
wondering
minor.
why didn't
She waits for him to die. I mean,
Hindi
I'm
na rin,
wondering why
I
didn't they
think that's...
appeal? There ought to be an appeal eh.
no, just to give people a kind of a semblance of their probability. Now, when you file a case, I mean, how many, if let's say in 100 cases, how many cases are granted and how many cases are usually denied? I mean, statistically, would you have an idea?
The answer would be using the word case to case pa rin. So, well, kung magaling talaga yung presentation ng psychiatrist and then all the requirements are there, 80% is good, no? 80 to 90%. But that's why I always advise the parties to really look for a good psychiatrist and know really the history.
Right.
Because otherwise, any lawyer, hindi naman sa no? Any lawyer would say, oh sige, may ground yan. Ba, no? Pero dapat pag-aralan talaga because this is a serious matter.
That's true. Of course. Now, from April naman, I have an ongoing annulment case and I'm just now waiting for the decision to be given. However, I do not have any more money to pay for the legal fees of my lawyer. How can I check or know the decision of the courts in the dissolution of my marriage? Can I check this by myself or do I still need the help of a lawyer? Yeah.
Parang follow-up. This is just a follow-up on her case. She can
Yung
go to the
decision.
court. She can go to the court.
Doesn't have
No
to,
one is prohibiting her to go to the court and ask, oh, hello, what's the status of my case? Any party, you don't need to have the lawyer with you in order for you to know what is the status of your case. You can go to the court. The court is very friendly.
It's public record?
Ako have another advice para pambayad sa legal fees. Manghiram na lang kayo kay Karen at saka kay Ron.
Ay, baka biglang tumami colors natin ngayon. Ikaw talaga, Attorney Tony. Okay. But you know, before we end this topic, yung siguro something that we can mention is this pending Senate Bill 2225 filed in relation to annulment cases. Maybe either of you can explain.
Well, basically, the Senate bill provides that separation, in fact, for at least 5 years, that can be a ground for annulment. Siyempre, yung mga, imprisoned by the marriage, tuwan-tuwa dyan. But ang basic observation dyan is constitutional and public policy. Well, of course, alam nyo lahat, yung Constitution provides the sanctity of marriage, invaluable social institution. That's why it's the state that regulates it. Now, second is the basic policy that it might be against the law and against public policy because it's like you're treating marriage as an ordinary contract. Kasi pwede na tayong, huwag na tayong magkita ng 5 years, huwag tayo magsama. And then we file the 2 of us. And then ang kailangan lang, affidavit of parents, and that's it. Annulment na.
It's very easy to prove annulment with this new Senate bill.
So,
and with the OFWs, the amount of
lalo
OFWs
na
in this
yan.
country, nako, talagang 5 years is very easy to be
Correct.
apart for 5 years.
I guess the message here really is to you consider marriage contract or the contract of marriage is a different kind of animal. It's not like you can dissolve it just like that with the agreement of the parties. No? So I guess bottom line is you really have to think twice, thrice or 100 times. What was your saying? What you're saying?
No, I asked you a while ago, what's
Yeah?
the difference between a complete and a finished?
Complete or finished? The difference
Complete or
between
finished.
complete and finished.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
What is that?
Well, and you were not able to answer, but
No,
you're supposed to answer. Both of us are complete. We're married to the right woman.
Okay.
The others who are watching, probably they're saying they're finished. They're married to the wrong woman.
I think spouses should learn to use this. They should call each other mahal.
Mahal.
Every day.
Mahal.
Mahal because they really love each
Expensive,
other.
expensive.
And mahal kasi napakamahal po ng annulment right now.
Okay, thank you for your words of wisdom, Attorney Manel and
Anytime,
Attorney
anytime.
Tony. Sayang bitin na bitin sa time. So, but we'd like to
Yeah.
thank our guests, Attorney Antonio Ligon and Attorney Marinel Miranda Lopez, for being with us tonight in discussing the legal rights on annulment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome
Tony.
also.
Legal Help Desk will return after this short break. You're still tuned in to Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel.
Okay.
And today with a very
Yeah.
interesting and famous popular,
It's a popular topic. As I mentioned earlier, it's sad that it's a popular topic, but it's a reality, and well, people go through it. But yeah, if you are going to go through it, you have to know the proper steps and the proper grounds.
And the grounds, definitely the grounds. So,
Okay, let's recap
siguro
it, yeah.
one important lesson we learned today, when you're talking about annulment, ito yung permanente na hiwalay na talaga and then you can remarry again. The only ground for annulment, assuming walang ibang grounds to say that your marriage is void. Just to give an example, the marriage is void from the start if you have a prior existing marriage, kung kasal ka na dati pa. Or if one or both of you were under 18 when you got married, or if you did not have a valid marriage license at the time of your marriage, or if you are first cousins or magkamag-anak kayo,
Magkamag-anak kayo,
incestuous,
yeah.
okay. Yun yung mga void talaga from the start. But other than that, kahit pa lasinggero yung asawa nyo or nang bababae, that's not a ground for annulment. You can only file for annulment if there's psychological incapacity. The other things, kunwari hindi kayo sinusuportahan or inabandon na kayo, it might be signs that the other person is psychologically incapacitated. But to find out, you have to engage a psychiatrist and you have to prove psychological incapacity. All the other grounds, pag nananakit or alcoholic, nambubugbog, you can file for legal separation.
And I think it's good to point out, no? I mean, there are two aspects here, no? For a lot of women, none of those who are abused, physically abused. On one hand, the law doesn't want you to be continuously victimized. No? So I think what the law provides you with several ways to get away from that. Of course, legal separation is one, and of course, VAUSI, the VAUSI law is
Violence
there.
against women and their children. You can get a protection
Violence
order.
Against Women, Children Act. No? But yun nga, yung ibang usapan kasi yung being able to get married again. Okay? So, kung protection lang, there are certain laws to protect you from an abusive husband. But getting married again, that's a whole matter altogether. And a good point, no, that we should address. So for those who are able to get an annulment, it's important, two things. One, you have to register that decision of annulment in the civil registry. And two, you have to give the presumptive legitimacy to your children. If you don't do this, yung decision declaring your marriage annulled might be annulled.
Useless.
Yeah.
Kasi
Yes.
you cannot remarry
you cannot
again.
remarry.
Your next marriage would be considered void. And yung sinasabi ni Attorney Rod na presumptive legitim, that's the mana, yung entitled na mana yung mga anak ninyo from your annulled marriage. And another thing would be, for those who are still married legally, meaning kahit na 20, 30 years, kahit hindi na kayo nakikita ng asawa ninyo, if technically you're still married because none of you have filed for annulment and there's no annulment granted by the court, then you can't engage in other relationships. You can't have a live-in partner, you can't have sexual relations with other people, or else, if you're a woman, you're in danger of being considered guilty for the crime of adultery. And for men, if you're cohabiting with someone or having sexual relations under scandalous circumstances, meaning kalat na kalat ito, then you might be considered guilty of the crime of concubinage. So I'm saying crime because, take note, meron tong parusa ng imprisonment. So please be careful.
Ayan,
But if
okay.
you have a foreign husband, foreign
Ayan.
spouse, foreign wife, if they get a divorce in their own country where divorce is legal or valid, then you can have that divorce recognized in the Philippines, and then you can technically have your marriage declared as another divorce.
Only in the case where
Oo.
the foreign husband or foreign wife is the one who
Initiated.
Oh, yeah. In your case, hindi ka pwede.
I cannot initiate
You
it
cannot
unless
initiate
maging
it.
American citizen ako.
All right. So there are a lot of, if we have a lot more, if you have a lot more questions, you can ask us, send it to us via our Facebook page, and we'll try to answer them the best we can. Now, over the week, we have received some questions from our viewers on topics we have previously discussed. In this segment, we normally answer these questions as a recap of what was discussed, starting with Larry. Larry has a question. My mistress filed for child support because I refused to give her financial support after learning that she had other relationships and not just with me, though I signed my name to the child's birth certificate. I'm not sure anymore if the child is mine. Can I demand for a paternity test? If the child is proven not mine, can I withdraw my name from the birth certificate? Yeah, I guess technically, yeah, he has the right to claim.
Yes,
to
because in the first place,
to
they're
demand
not
for the
married,
paternity.
right? So the child is illegitimate. Now,
Yeah.
the question would be, are you acknowledging the child as your biological child? Because then you become obligated to provide support. But in this case, you can demand a paternity
question,
test
yeah.
to prove the filiation of the child, meaning you will prove that the child is not really your biological child, in which case you will have no legal relationship to the child,
Right.
no obligation to support the child, and again, even if it's a legitimate child nga kasi, meron pa rin yung rights pag ikaw yung biological father, meaning if you pass away, meron pa rin siyang karapatan na magmana from you. Hindi nga lang kasing laki ng share as a legitimate child. So if you want to make sure those issues are gone, then just ask for a paternity test and prove the non-filiation, meaning na hindi mo anak itong batang ito.
And once that's
Okay.
proven, yeah, you can technically withdraw your support. All right.
Our next recap question is from Julian. I have a 9-month-old baby who is using the surname of my ex-boyfriend. I want to change the surname to mine. If I do this, is there a chance that the father and his family will take my baby from me?
Okay, so that 9-month-old, so when she said that my 9-month-old baby is using my husband, my ex-boyfriend's family name, I'm assuming that it was in the birth certificate, right? Because obviously the 9-month-old baby can't be using it in school or whatever. So, so I guess there's the ex-boyfriend's name is there in the birth certificate, and you want to change it. You can't just that's a special proceeding, right? It's a special proceeding. You can't just do that. But your question about whether the family can take the baby, his family can take the baby from you, no, they can't. You know, you
Especially
yeah.
in this case, because the child is illegitimate, meaning she is not married to the ex-boyfriend. So you're the only person who has parental authority
Correct.
over your baby. So regardless of what happens, the father, your ex-boyfriend, and his family cannot take the baby away from you. Especially since a child under 7 years is presumed to be, it's the best interest of the child, na the custody should be for the mother. Especially pag illegitimate, you're the only one who has parental authority over your baby. So don't worry, they cannot take
They
your
cannot
baby
take away.
from you.
Yeah, they can't take your baby away from you. But yun nga, it's not a clerical correction lang, no? When you remove your ex-boyfriend's name there, it's a major change. So you have it requires a special proceeding. All right. Now James asks us, how many business days can a private company such as a BPO need to give the resigned employee his final pay?
Under the law, there's no prescribed period, meaning wala tayong law that will say that within 30 days you have to be paid, unless there's a company policy in writing na nakasulat yan. But what's the period actually refers to the employee, kung anong period yung kailangan niyang hingiin yung pay, meaning after you are resigned or fired from your job, you're entitled to the pay that you've already earned, but you have 10 years to make sure that you claim it. Meaning, from the time that you've resigned from your work or you've been fired, and if they refuse to pay your money, you have to file a claim within 10 years in order to get
That's
your
a prescriptive
pay.
period for civil, diba? Demand, civil claims. Yeah. Okay, so in other words, wala sa labor code yun. There's no rule on the labor code as to when you're going to be
Yung
paid.
deadline ng employer, yes.
All right.
Okay, from Joseph, my mother owns an apartment which was under my parents' name. However, after their death, I was surprised to learn that I was the new owner of the apartments. They put my name on the title without my consent. My problem is I began receiving subpoenas regarding the apartment with late ITRs. How can I address the subpoena and fix the problem? I'm afraid my name will be dragged on the issue. Parang baliktad na swerte niya pag tingin niya na lang, may property na siya.
Yeah,
but
unfortunately, yun nga,
you cannot collaterally attack yung ownership of the property because the title is presumed valid, meaning if your name appears there, the property is presumed to be yours. You cannot just disclaim it.
Yeah.
And so in this case, you'd have to go to the Land Registration Authority to prove that you're not the real owner. But, just as a practical advice, since your parents have already passed away, ang mangyayari kasi dito, even if you prove that the property is really their own property because they've passed away, by operation of law, ang tagamana nitong property nito would be you and your siblings if you have siblings. So,
to some extent,
babalik din sa kanila.
okay.
And
To
they'd
some
have
extent,
to
you're
pay
lucky.
real estate taxes pa.
Yeah, to some extent, you're kind of lucky because you didn't have to pay, I guess you didn't have to pay estate tax. Diba?
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, yeah. I meant estate tax, di ba?
Yeah. So I would say that that's a good problem to have. I guess you just have to pay the real estate taxes or whatever you owe to the BIR or the local government. All right. So it's a good
and if he
problem to have,
doesn't want the property, then you can sell it. But
sell it to us.
naging commercial.
All right. That is all the time that we have for tonight. We would like to thank our viewers who've sent us their legal questions via social media. If you have any questions or comments on tonight's episode, share them with us on our Facebook and Twitter pages. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. If you missed any of our previous episodes, you may watch these at your convenience simply by downloading the Solar News Channel app on your mobile devices from Google Play and the Apple App Store. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.